Purplish is a shoegaze band based out of Spencer, Iowa, and they just recently released a new album called Do Not Be Deceived. And on this album, if you look at track number 25, you can see that I'm very flattered. A big shout out to Purplish for not only making this album, which is awesome, but also showing some love to your fans at the same time. I've listened to this album several times, so I figured it'd be fun to make an accompanying poster for it. Before we get started, only about 10% of you are actually subscribed to the channel. Subscribing really does help me out here on YouTube, and it also helps other people who are looking for the same type of content. So please make sure you're subscribed in order to support the channel. All right, so I found this really cool picture on Pexels recently, and I figured we could use it as a starting point. So we're gonna make sure that we're copying the full size of the image here. And now I'm gonna go in here into Photoshop and make a new document at 18 by 24 with a resolution of 300. All right, now I'm gonna paste this image into here, and you can see that this is a very large image. So all we have to do is enlarge it just a little bit. I like it to kind of go a little bit beyond the bounds of this because I want it to be a little bit more on the abstract side. So let's go ahead and enlarge it a pretty good amount. I definitely want to see a little bit of her mouth right there. Basically, the idea of this is that it kind of captures what it looks like when you're at a shoegaze concert. If you allow yourself to really get into the shoegaze show, it can feel like an out-of-body experience. All right, so I'm just gonna kind of keep moving things a little bit in this general direction. I don't want too much. I don't want to go like this right here, but I like the idea of kind of seeing this. We might enlarge this just a little bit more. The resolution of the image is so high that we actually have plenty of playing room there. All right, I think this is actually looking really cool for this composition of the image, and we'll go in and add some really cool effects here. So now that I'm happy with this, I'm gonna go ahead and merge the layers together. And we'll just get that all the way down there. All right, so kind of what I'm envisioning is a little bit of an Astro Bright type of feel. If you've ever seen any of their album covers, it's very bright and washed out, and it's almost like you can't quite tell what the image actually is. So that's kind of my goal. So what I want to do is hit G on my keyboard, and that's going to bring up my gradient tool. So I'm going to go over here to the gradient drop-down menu, and we're going to go down here to iridescent. And I want to choose something that has a good amount of colors right here. So I'm going to zoom out slightly, and now I'm just going to click and drag this gradient all the way down here. Now what's great about this is you can go over to your properties panel and you can change this gradient anytime you want. If your properties panel isn't showing, make sure you go to Window and Properties. And if you're still in the gradient tool, then you'll see your gradient controls in the properties panel. So we can click over here and just kind of test out different ones that we like. We can even use our keyboard to cycle through these. All right, so I like this one a lot because it has a good amount of colors going on. And we've also got some purplish colors in there as well. So I think it really works well for the album. So with your move tool selected on your keyboard, hold down shift and hit the plus button, and that will cycle through the blending modes for you. And so far these are looking cool, but it's not exactly the look that we're going for. Okay, screen is very close to what we're going for, but let's see what else we have. Okay, color dodge is cool, but it's very, very intense, although that could be a good thing. Okay, vivid light is really cool, and it's almost kind of getting that feel to where you're kind of lost in the lighting and everything like that. And when you're listening to a shoegaze show live, this is kind of what it looks like. It looks like this visually, where it looks like there's just brightness and a lot of noise, and you're just kind of in the shimmery experience there. Hard mix is really cool, but it's a little bit too retro. Okay, so I would say that my two favorites are gonna be between screen and vivid light. However, screen I think is gonna be better overall, because with vivid light, she kind of looks like the Joker. And yes, we could kind of rearrange some things around, but I think that screen is going to be really cool there. Because we still have the color effects going on, but we also have like a foggy type of overlay to it, and we definitely want the image to be obscured, so I think it works a lot better. All right, now I'm going to go here to the actual album cover itself. I'm going to right-click on Copy Image, and I'm going to paste this right here, and we're going to enlarge this. I don't really care how this looks when we get it enlarged because we can always add in effects that kind of cover up the pixelation later. Linear burn is looking really cool. It maintains the actual album artwork itself and also the image underneath. Hard light is really interesting, and it's definitely going in the direction that I'm wanting to go in because we've got the album cover right here, and then we've also got the eye and we've got the mouth. But what I think we would probably do in this case is go back and re-grab that original image again. Because of the placement here, I would want to make sure that we still see her actual face. Because of this composition, we can more clearly see her eye, her nose, and her mouth. So I think this is actually going to work better. Okay, let's analyze this image right here. So what we have is a blending of these really cool colors, kind of like some pinks and purples going on. And then we have what looks to be very similar to a radial blur in Photoshop. So let's apply a radial blur to the image of the girl's face. So with her face layer selected, let's go up here to Filter, Blur, and radial blur. And we want to do a spin method. We want to make sure the quality is at its best. And we're going to do maybe like a 20 on the amount and just see how that looks. You hit OK. Okay, so keep in mind, anytime you do a radial blur, you can't choose where the focal point of the image actually is. So it's doing it right in the center of the image. So it's a little bit too strong. So let's undo that. So what we're going to do is go up here to Filter, Blur, and Radial Blur again. This time I'm gonna do 10 and see how that looks. Okay, that's looking a whole lot better. However, there's one thing that we need to do first before we do this blur. I'm gonna hit Command J, which is gonna duplicate that layer. And now we're gonna apply the filter again. And now that we have this blur, we're gonna blend it with the layer below so we can more clearly see the mouth and the nose. And we're gonna change the blending mode from normal to linear light. And that right there is super cool. It's bringing in some of that brightness while still maintaining that foggy look that we're going for. All right, overall, it's a little bit on the brighter side. So I wanna adjust that a little bit by adding a curves adjustment layer. And this is going to be above all of the layers and it's going to affect everything that's below. So we're just going to slightly adjust some of these brighter areas and bring up some of those midtones a little bit more. We don't want it to get too harsh. So we're just going to kind of play around and see what we can do here. All right, I think that's looking really cool. And now let's go in and add a grain layer. I'm going to hit Shift and Delete on my keyboard to fill this with 50% gray. Hit OK. Now we're going to go over here to Filter, Camera Raw Filter. I'm going to turn the grain up to about a 50. And for the size, I'm going to go about 75. And roughness, I'm going to go all the way up. And we'll add a slight vignette, maybe of like -10. And hit OK. And now we'll just change this blending mode from normal to overlay. And we've got a good consistent grain going across the entire image. All right, so the album cover itself doesn't have any text, but let's add some to make it feel more like a promotional poster. All right, so I'm gonna open their logo in a new tab right here. I'm gonna right click and click on copy image. And now I'm gonna go below the grain layer by clicking on the curves adjustment layer so it also affects the logo. And we'll rename this logo. And I wanna enlarge it just a little bit. We wanna make sure that we're not making it too grainy. And I'm gonna move it in an area that's kind of like maybe around right here or so. And we're gonna change the blending mode to pen light. So that's gonna take out that background right there. All right, and here I am in Illustrator and I'm gonna type out "Do not be deceived." And I'll find a good font that will pair well with the logo. And I think this is really cool. So let's rearrange this a little bit and make it look a little bit more original. So I just set the kerning from auto to optical. So what we're gonna do is create outlines here. And now we're gonna ungroup everything. And now I'm gonna go in and group these little sections together. And now we can just kind of arrange this however we want to. I kind of like the idea of the baselines all being shifted. Let's do something kind of like this. And this was released January 31st of 2025. So I'll add the little release date down there. And yes, this is an American format. All right, this is really cool actually, but what I wanna do is kind of lean really far in to that baseline shift idea and kind of bring these individual ones down, like maybe just a few of them. And we'll kind of bring this one in right here. And that's kind of cool. It kind of helps, I think, to communicate the message of deception, but I could be really reading into that. Now let's make sure we do the same thing down here. All right, so I'm pretty happy with that. So let's go ahead and select all of this and hit copy. We're gonna paste this into Photoshop as a smart object and hit OK. And in my opinion, the album title should be large and the logo of the band should be a little bit on the smaller side. So I'm going to move this down to here, and we'll do something kind of like this in this area. Now let's make sure that these are both aligned to each other on the right side. All right, so now let's double click on this title layer right here. I'm going to go over here to color overlay, and I'm just going to color drop one of these colors right here. And we might make it a little bit less saturated and a little bit darker. Let's kind of go in this direction right here, somewhere in there. All right, that's looking nice. And this little area right here is kind of getting in the way. So I'm gonna go in here and use my clone stamp tool. And we're just gonna sample that area and then just take that one part out so it makes it easier to read it. All right, now I'm gonna make this text a little bit more natural, like it was actually printed on the paper itself. So with our title layer selected, we're gonna go up here to Filter, Blur, and Gaussian Blur, and we're just gonna give it a slight blur of 1 pixel. That way the outer edges of the type are not so sharp and clean. It looks a little bit more naturally part of the paper itself. And here's our final product in Photoshop. If you haven't listened to Purplish yet, definitely go check them out. I've got the link to their Bandcamp down in the description. I hope I taught you something today, and I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe to support the channel. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.